for Josh Allen to make a Super Bowl, right? For him to make a Super Bowl, win a Super Bowl, what do the Buffalo Bills need to surround him with as far as pieces, additions to this team?
I mean, I think it's a glaringly obvious one. You need a wide receiver one. I think that's been the case for quite some time, and you need to bolster this defense. But defensively, they put a lot of draft capital into who they have drafted over the last 2 years, and I'd like to see those young players continue to develop under Joe Brady and this team and organization that they now have as a coaching staff. And I think you can address receiver in free agency, you can address receiver in the draft. You got to go get a guy. Like, you got to go get a dude. You haven't had a dude since Stephon Diggs was there. That's the
Mhm.
reality. And it shows. And look at what Stephon Diggs, as much as a headache as he was for you, look at what happened when he went to Houston. Look at what happened when he left Houston. Look at what happened when he went to New England. You have to have, if you were a top tier, especially with the type of player that Josh Allen is, how can you imagine that offense without a wide receiver one? And I'm happy that it's Joe Brady taking over, because you know this well because you were there. In the 2019 LSU team, how many wide receivers did you have on your LSU? Look at that wide receiver room versus the Buffalo Bills wide receiver room. That's insane. That's insane to look at the drop off of talent that you're talking about in college to the NFL. So you got to go get a guy. And I think now with Joe Brady at the helm and not having a defensive guy as your head coach, I don't think there's any chance that he's not going to go get Josh Allen his guy, because he needs one. He has to have one.
Yeah, no, I mean, he definitely needs a guy, right? The thing that but I'll say this, and as we, I guess, peel back the layers of this Buffalo Bills conversation, I went from rooting for the Buffalo Bills, right? Them kind of being the underdog story and everybody wanted them to win, to kind of being fed up. And I'm not fed up with the players. The ownership, though, and what they've done over the past few months, it's a red flag, right? You know, we
I
talk
agree.
about dating and they say a red flag. To me, a red flag is incompetency, right? When you show that you incompetent as ownership, I
I'm
have
out.
no faith in your franchise at all, and I'm out, right? I give you very very little to none as far as attention goes, right? And that's almost where I'm at with the Buffalo Bills, because as you talk about the number one wide receiver, right? You can't have that conversation without having the Keon Coleman conversation. What the hell happened? What the
I
hell
know.
is going on, right? And this is a young man, because Paige, when we rewind the clock, right? Let's, you know what? Let's do this. Let's talk currently, right? Keon Coleman is not playing great for the Buffalo Bills due to
Sure.
whatever reason, right? But if we rewind the clock, when Keon Coleman first got drafted to the Buffalo Bills, right? Who was basically the second face of that franchise?
Keon
Keon
Coleman.
Coleman, who was
Yeah.
doing interviews all the time. Keon Coleman, who was everywhere, all over the clips. They were putting him on all these commercials.
Yeah.
Keon Coleman, right? And this was before a
Mhm.
young man even played a down of football in the NFL. And I look at it from the Buffalo Bills perspective, and I'm like, did y'all do anything to help the young man out, right? Like y'all put him in this situation, and then did anybody do anything to help him out or foresee, hey, this is what his character is. Maybe we need to dial this back some and focus more on getting him together to play the game of football, right? Get him to be the number one wide receiver. And the way everything just unfolded, us not having a clear picture of why Keon Coleman, had to sit down, and then also the ownership getting up there and then speaking on Keon Coleman indirectly, but directly, kinda. It just didn't make sense for me. And I'll say this: I'm if I'm a number one wide receiver, right? Because I want to get into the AJ Brown conversation. I'm gonna ask you a question pertaining to that. But if I'm a number one wide receiver, I have a little bit of trepidation going there.
Yeah.
Just because the Stephon Diggs thing didn't work out, then now I'm looking at the Keon Coleman situation not working out, right? And I understand catching passes from Josh Allen, but I think they probably have to be very specific in the type of wide receiver they go after, because it seems as though this franchise is willing to hang their wide receivers out to dry. So I want to take that and ask this question.
Before you ask me the question,
Go
before you
ahead.
ask me the
Go
question,
ahead.
I want to say something quickly. So I had a conversation with a few NFL draft prospects who play the wide receiver position over the last week while I was
Mhm.
out in Phoenix and interviewing some guys. I'm not going to name them because it's not what I'm going to do. But I asked this specific question about the Buffalo Bills because of Josh Allen, right? And there was some trepidation based off of what the owner did. And that's a real thing. People got to understand that there are real implications for when an owner goes on national TV and shits on a player. Because that's what he did. I will not mince words. What he did was inexcusable, unacceptable, and some of the worst behavior I've ever seen an NFL owner have. And it was seen, it was heard, and it was seen by everybody. And don't think that that's not going to have an implication long term. And I
Mhm.
think it's going to be the same thing when it comes to free agents. And that's a fine line. And you said it perfectly at the top of this. This went from a team that kind of everybody was like everybody's favorite extra team, right? It was like if you're not a Buffalo Bills fan, you kind of root for them anyways because you're like they've lost the 4 Super Bowls in a row and everybody likes Josh Allen and they're the underdog and blah blah blah. Not anymore. Not
Mhm.
anymore. They aren't. And that's a big problem for them because they got to learn how to be a new version of the Buffalo Bills under Joe Brady and it's going to be a team that kind of has a target on their back for a variety of reasons, Keith.
Yeah, no, the wide receiver thing is huge. And you know this, right? When you're talking about free agents, the thing with free agency is that it takes two to tangle, right? Meaning the wide receiver has to want to go there. Like it's not just I want you, you come here. No, he has to say
No.
no. I want to go there also. And I just there's been something, and like you said, right? When it happens once, right? You can say circumstances, a situation, right? But when it happens two, three times in my opinion, it becomes a pattern and a trend, right? And
Yes,
it's
for
more
sure.
likely than not. And if I'm looking at my wide receiver, I'm like, yo, if we don't make the playoffs, then are they going to blame me and not blame other situations? And especially when you talk about the wide receiver position as far as quote unquote divas. 90% of them are divas, right? So which wide receiver do you think you're going to go out there and grab that is not going to be a diva, right? That is not
Yes,
going to have a
100%.
personality, that's not going to be boisterous and how he feels about getting the football, that's not going to get frustrated at some point. They all do. With that being said, let's go to one of the most boisterous wide receivers there are. Should the Buffalo Bills trade the number 26 overall pick to go get AJ Brown?
No, because they can't handle AJ Brown.
Mm.
That's it. That's
Point
it.
blank period. Yep.
Point blank
I agree.
period. That there's no analysis that I need to make past that point. He is not from a character standpoint, he was not happy after he won a Super Bowl. What about the current situation in Buffalo and how the owner handled that makes you think that he is the answer to your problems? That is a locker room cancer. That is not what you need. That is not how you need to do business. The type of player, and I'm not saying that he's on the block by any stretch of the imagination, but the type of caliber of number one receiver and the type of guy you need is a guy like Justin Jefferson. That's the type of guy you need. You don't need problems. You don't need guys that have issues. You need a guy that's going to come in there and understand that he's going to have to earn it. Just like because that is very clearly what's going on with Keon Coleman. So you got to be really damn sure whoever this guy is, whether it's in the draft or free agency, it's the right type of wide receiver. And that is hard to find because the Justin Jeffersons of the world are the exceptions to the
Mhm.
rule. They are
Yep.
not the norm. AJ Brown's the norm. So Buffalo is in a tough spot, but there is no chance in hell I'm trading away the 26th pick for AJ Brown because there's no chance that I trust Buffalo or AJ Brown. I don't trust either side.
I agree. You want to talk about the exact opposite of Mike Tomlin's ability to deal with
Yes.
dysfunction is the
Yep.
Buffalo Bills, right?
Yep.
They sat there and said that Stephon Diggs was a lot to deal with. And Stephon
Oh.
Diggs did the Bills a favor, right? And what I
Mhm.
mean is that he kept his off the field issues off the field, right? Even though
Yeah.
they were heavily documented, they was off the field. AJ Brown brings his issues to the game. He brings them to the sideline. He brings them in the game
Yes.
during the play. He brings them to the locker room, right? Stephon Diggs, you got to hop on Instagram to see what's going on with him, right? But when it comes to playing the game of football, he handles that part. So if y'all couldn't handle Stephon Diggs situation, and I'm talking obviously two totally different situations, but as far as impacting the team, y'all can't handle AJ Brown. So I don't think they should trade for him either. I think if you're looking for a number one wide receiver, I like the Justin Jefferson call out. If you want an Eagles wide receiver, maybe potentially a Devontae Smith, right? Like see if Devontae Smith can help you out because he's another more mild mannered guy, right? But I think if the Buffalo Bills are going to be who they are And what I mean by that is if they're going to, and I'm going to say it, if they're going to be the lovable losers, right? If they're going to be the good guys, if they're going to be the people that they want the underdog story, I think they're going to have to find a wide receiver that fits that community, right? And that's not
Yeah.
going to be a loud, boisterous guy, because the loud, boisterous guy doesn't fit the mold of we're the underdogs, just kind of woe is me type
Yeah.
situation. That's not what
Yeah.
those wide receivers are. So they have to find a guy that not only is talented, but fits them from a character perspective.
Yep, 100%. It's the AJ Brown situation is going to be one we're going to hear a lot about. He's going to be documented, and that's before he starts talking. And it's only inevitable. It's only a certain amount of time. The Super Bowl's over now. I'm like, yeah, give it 10 days. AJ gonna
Mhm,
do something. He gonna say
mhm.
something. He gonna be on an Instagram live, a Madden, but he can't help himself. He's going to draw attention to himself in some capacity, and it's gonna happen right before we all show up at the combine. Or he's gonna show up at the combine, which wouldn't surprise me at all either if he was bopping around at Prime one night trying to set it off with the NFL. Won't be surprised at all if that is what happens.